have an equal sign, because that means, like if you took a number line and you did this, and here's 128, and you said this is your less than case. Now, your other one has to include the rest of the number lines. So it has to be here, and it's going to have to cover this side because nobody covered that. So there's your greater than or equal to. If one has an equal sign, the other one does not. And the non-equal and the equal are complements of each other. The non-equal and the equal would say, here's the 5. It's not equal to 5. It can be everything else over here, but it cannot be equal to 5. Its complement says, it's just 5. Fill that one in. So by the time you do the HA and the HO, you've covered every possible case. Questions on these? It's good to get this down pat now because we've used this concept of HO and HA through this whole entire chapter. Now, 15 is asking you to match this up. Now, they use a soft bracket like this when it's not equal. They used a filled in, or I filled it in for the alternative. Do they have one that has an equal sign?
Yeah, I did.
No, they don't have one. Everything didn't have one. Normally, it's a soft bracket if it's not included. It's a hard bracket if it is included. In other words, they'd have to do this to include it. Or they could just fill the dot in. So the first one matched up to, this is greater than 3. In other words, you would have an open here and greater than. Its complement, everything else. Less than or equal to. This guy's less than 3. It would be here and down. Its complement, filled in, and greater. This is weird looking, but it's saying use everything but 3. This guy's an open circle. So its complement is use 3 only. It's either 3 or it's everything else. This one greater than 2. Its complement less than or equal to 2. Okay? Everybody all right with this? And the last part, you had to make your statement from this. A light bulb manufacturer claims, here's his claim, that the mean is a U, light of a certain type of light bulb is more than 750. There's his claim. Just write that out. If it's not an equal sign, it's an HA. And then write its complement. Claim can be either one. And when we go to decipher these, we're going to have a little chart and we say claim, an HO, HA, is it a claim, is it not? And we follow a chart to get through this. Number 24, the number of shipping levels per million shipments has a standard deviation. That's the little o. That is less than 3. Make sure you use the proper symbol for this too. They're not all used and none of them are X bars. So it's less than 3. That's the claim. The opposite is complement, greater than or equal to 3. Standard deviation of the base price, again, that's your little o, is no more than. No more than means less than or equal to. If you had no more than $10 in your pocket, you can have all the way up to 10, right? You can't have more than that. So less than or equal to. That's your claim. And your complement is the opposite. A research organization reports that 33% turn it into a proportion. I did? No. No, that 33%, that's a proportion. Set it up as a proportion and state your claim. The 33%, that's what it is. So that's the equal sign. Number 27, again used a proportion. There's another is. It's equal to, and its opposite is not equal to. Okay? And the last one, 28. 28 says a study claims that the mean, there's the U, is 24 months. Is equal to, that's the claim. And the complement, none. Yeah. Variance is the O squared. All your symbols. Mean, this is for your population. Mean, variance, standard deviation, it's just the O, and proportion, proportion is just the P. The sample, for when you test against your sample, is X bar, S squared, S to P hat. This is your sample, but your population is what you're testing against. You're testing the claim against the population. And again, you're going to challenge it with your sample. Okay? All right. So let's proceed. Okay. Today we're going to talk about type 1 and type 2 errors and maybe hit the level of significance. I'm not sure how far we'll get with that. So I am on page, let's see where I am. I'm on page 335. You're going to find when you test a claim, we're always going to assume that the null, the HO, is true. We're going to assume that that part is true. Now, when you perform your test, one of two things can happen. Either you can reject the null hypothesis, because it didn't really be so true, or you could fail to reject the null hypothesis, because it probably was true. So these are the way we state this. Now, sometimes when you make a decision, there can be, like for instance, if you're in a courtroom, you're on a jury, you have to convict this person or not. All your evidence shows you that he's got to be guilty, but there's that little reasonable doubt. So you're supposed to say not guilty. Now, if you say guilty and this person really is not guilty, you made an error. He goes to jail. If you say not guilty and he's guilty, you made an error and he's on the street. So one of those errors is worse than the other. It's a type 1 and a type 2 error. So you have to decide which error is worse. Which error is worse in terms of that. What would you say about that? Would you rather see a guilty man go free or a not guilty man go to jail? Which one would you think is worse? Guilty man go free?
Not guilty go to jail. What if it's murder?
Not guilty go to jail? Ah, so does it matter what crime he committed? So if it's murder, then we're putting a murderer back on the street. If it's something, petty larceny or grand larceny or something that, maybe isn't harmful to somebody else, we're not letting him get charged for that. So there's different situations where one type 1 error is worse than the other. And they result on this. I gave you a little table to help figure out what this is. Now, because this is important, guys, because your decision is based on your sample and not the entire population, there is always a chance that you made your decision based on a sample that wasn't really a true representation of your population. You might reject a no when it's actually true, or fail to reject it when it's actually false, because your data led you to do so. So when that happens, of course, depending on how severe the penalty is or the result is, the error that it's caused, you might want to go back and do another sample. You might want to say, no, my sample is good. It's a good representation. I stand by it. So these are things that you have to look at. A type 1 error, and if you follow your chart, here's the truth of HO on the top. Do I have a chart? Here it is. Here's the truth of HO on the top. A type 1 error says, your decision of HO is true. You did not reject it. It was true. You did not reject it. Good decision. HO is true, but you rejected it. Type 1 error. HO was false. The statement was really a false statement, but you did not reject it. Whoops, error. Type 2 error. It was false and you rejected it. Good decision. So all I want you to be aware of is that there are two types of errors that result that happen as a result of you either rejecting your no or failing to reject your no. There's always a chance that something else is going to happen. Now, the one thing that I found was this. This is the one I gave you guys, right? This analogy. Did I give you this? Yeah. Okay. This was probably something more related, like the court thing. Look at the courtroom analogy. Here are your potential choices and the errors that could accompany each. I gave you the medical? Okay. Here's a courtroom one. We cannot rule out that the defendant is innocent, so he or she is set free without penalty. A potential error is they were really guilty, but we let them go free. Choice 2. We believe that there is enough evidence to conclude that the defendant's guilty. Possible error. We charge the person who really wasn't guilty. We put him in jail. Although the seriousness of your two potential errors depends on the seriousness of your crime and the punishment, choice 2 is usually seen as more serious. That there was enough evidence to conclude this, but we let them free. Usually that, they say, is the worst one. Because, 1 second, if he is in jail, what usually happens? An appeal. So he gets a chance to appeal. If we let him free, we don't get a chance to pull him back.
Yeah, but if you jail an innocent person, then the person who committed the murder or whatever crime
is still on the loose.
So either way, there's still...
You're right. Either way, we have a type 1 and a type 2 error. Either one, we have type 1 and type 2. So you have to decide, which one is worse. Depending on the nature of the crime. Medical ones get very serious. This is the one I gave you guys?
Yeah.
Okay. Consider a medical scenario. You are tested for a disease. Most tests are not 100% accurate. In reading your results, the lab technician or physician must make a choice between two hypotheses. You do not have the disease, which is the no. You have the disease, which is his alternative. Just read it over for a minute, guys. No, Mrs. That's okay. Yes. Okay, I'll tell her. Okay. Melissa at the end of the period. Okay. Here are your two possible errors. In the opinion of the medical practitioner, you are healthy. The test result was weak enough to be called negative for the disease. A potential error is you actually are diseased, but you're told you're not. In other words, this was a false negative. There's false positives, there's false negatives. Now, usually a false positive, well, the next case, I will read that. In your opinion of your medical practitioner, you are diseased. This was strong enough to be called a positive. The potential error, you actually are healthy, but you've been told you're diseased. In other words, your test was a false positive. Normally, if you're positive, they retest you for different tests, right? They give you more tests to that. Sometimes this is caught. My opinion, everybody has their own opinion. It depends, again, on the type of disease. In case of an HIV, a false negative would mean not telling someone they have HIV when in fact they do. However, a false positive is frightening, but usually means more tests.
I'd say choice one is the worst.
In case of this, well, yeah.
Because no matter what, even if you had the cold and you don't think you have the cold, but now you have the cold and now you're sick.
Exactly. That's my opinion as well, Joey. That's my opinion as well. Yes. So my goal in telling you this is it depends on the situation it depends on the type of errors. So sometimes a choice type 1 is worse than a type 2, or vice versa, depending on which one. So I just want you to be aware that these are out here. All right. Tomorrow we'll continue and do a couple of these.